Picture the most beautiful woman you have ever seen. Now put her in a room smaller than your bathroom. Give her hair that weighs 2 pounds and took 3 hours to build and cannot be touched until tomorrow. Give her a face painted white as chalk and red as a wound. Give her 12 layers of silk that cost more than a fisherman makes in a year, tied at the front, not the back, for reasons that have nothing to do with fashion. Give her shoes that lift her 6 inches off the ground on carved wooden platforms that she has learned to walk in like a second language. Give her a city of 500,000 people outside the walls she's not allowed to cross. And then, at the end of a night that began at sunset and will end past midnight, lay her down, not on a futon, not on a pillow, on a block. A small lacquered wooden block about the size of a thick book, with a curved neck rest at the top and a tiny drawer in the middle for small things. Her entire head, the hairstyle, the kanzashi pins, the hours of work, balanced over this thing like a piece of porcelain on a fence post. She sleeps like this every night, because if she doesn't, the hair is ruined, and if the hair is ruined, she can't work, and if she can't work, she can't earn, and if she can't earn, well, we'll get to that. We're going to Yoshiwara tonight, Edo period Japan, somewhere in the middle of the 18th century, the floating world, the pleasure quarter, the place that existed just outside ordinary life, exactly far enough to be both irresistible and safely ignorable. This isn't a history of the beautiful things. We're going to live it. One night, one person, everything she would have felt, smelled, endured, and calculated in the hours between putting on the face and taking it off. So, I make these history stories. They're mostly about people nobody remembers, doing things nobody talks about, suffering in ways that never made it into the textbooks. And I genuinely have no idea if anyone actually sleeps to them, or if you're all just weirdos who like hearing about women balancing their skulls on pieces of wood for 600 years. Either way, get comfortable. Here we go. Not all the way, just a fraction. The way they do when sleep is still pulling at you, when your body knows you're awake but your mind refuses to believe it. For half a second you don't know where you are. Then your neck moves, just slightly, just the tiniest unconscious shift, the way anyone moves when they first surface from sleep. And the pain hits you, not screaming pain, not the kind that makes you gasp, just a deep, settled ache that runs from the base of your skull down through your shoulders, the pain of a joint held rigid for hours, of muscles that have not been allowed to relax the way sleeping muscles want to relax. You went to sleep on a block of wood, and you slept on it correctly, which means your neck has spent the last 4 hours in the exact position you put it in, and not a millimetre different. This is success. This is what passing the night correctly feels like. You lie still for a moment. Let the pain settle into something manageable. The room is cool. A paper shoji screen separates you from the corridor, and through it the very first grey suggestion of morning light is beginning to leak. Somewhere outside, a cart is moving along a packed dirt road, the sound of wooden wheels, a voice calling out, fading into distance. Edo is waking up. 1 million people, give or take, the largest city in the world in this particular century, which is something that doesn't get said often enough. Not London, not Paris, not any European city that tends to claim the title in Western history books. Edo, this city. The city you can see from the rooftop of this building if you go up there, which you are technically not supposed to do, but which you do sometimes anyway on summer nights, when the air in your room feels like wet cloth pressed against your face. you're in Yoshiwara, which is in Edo, but also not in Edo, which is inside the city but surrounded by walls and a moat, and a single gate that opens and closes on a schedule, which is the most famous address in Japan and also one of the most surveilled, controlled, restricted pieces of ground you could possibly occupy. You've lived here for 11 years. You came when you were 9. Let me tell you about the takamakura. That's the Japanese name. Taka meaning high, makura meaning pillow, high pillow, neck rest, the thing that preserved the hair. It's been around for centuries before you. Long before the Yoshiwara, before the Edo period, women of means who wore elaborate hairstyles slept on versions of this thing. The concept is simple. The hair is built up away from the neck, pinned and oiled and structured into a shape that takes hours to create and cannot be recreated quickly. So instead of sleeping with your head on a soft pillow, which would crush and displace the entire structure, you sleep with your neck on the support, your hair hanging free behind you, untouched. Yours is lacquered black, about 30 centimetres tall when you set it upright. It has a small curved rest at the top, padded with paper. The paper is important, we'll come back to that. And a tiny drawer at the bottom where you keep a few small things, a folded piece of paper, a coin, a comb you use for quick adjustments in the mornings. The padding on the neck rest is paper, not silk, not cotton, not anything soft. Paper, because paper is disposable, because after a few nights the paper picks up the oil from your skin, the residue of the oshiroi powder, the trace evidence of hours of performance. When the paper is dirty, you replace it. The block stays. Clean paper, fresh surface, same rigid architecture beneath your skull. Some women, the ones who are new to this, the ones who haven't yet learned, put softer padding on theirs. Try to make it more comfortable. They wake up with ruined hair, so then they switch to paper. You use paper. But here's the thing about the takamakura that nobody really explains until you're living with it. It's not just about hair preservation, though it is mostly about hair preservation. It's about sleep posture, about the way your whole body learns, over months and years, to hold itself differently at night. You don't toss. You don't turn. You sleep on your back, neck elevated, spine relatively straight, arms at your sides or folded across your stomach, like a carved figure, like something arranged in a display case. It takes approximately 8 months to learn to sleep like this without waking up 10 times a night. Yuki, one of the older women in this house, who's been doing this for 15 years, told you that once. 8 months. After that, your body simply knows. It becomes the default. Your body learns that this is what sleep is. A controlled stillness. A preservation. You wonder sometimes if you still know how to sleep any other way. You think maybe you don't. Here's another thing about the takamakura. The paper that pads the neck rest. In some houses, not all but some, the women sleep with a white paper collar around their neck. The kind that tucks into the kimono to keep the back of the garment clean. They sleep with this collar precisely positioned, and in the morning, the courtesan, the house mother, checks whether the collar has shifted. If it has, you moved in your sleep. If it hasn't, you lay still all night. In some houses, this check is just practical. Just a way of knowing how well someone slept. In some houses, it's something more like surveillance. Your house is the practical kind. Or at least that's what Fumiko, the oiran, says when you've asked her about it, which you have exactly once. In your first year here, when you were 10 years old and didn't yet understand that there were questions that got you answers and questions that got you something else. It helps me know if you slept well, Fumiko said then. She looked at the paper when she said it. Not at you. You learned from that. Let me describe the smell of your room, because smell is always first. And this room has a smell that is completely its own. Binsakiabura, camellia oil. The oil used to hold the hairstyle in place, pressed into the hair in layers, worked through with combs, fixed with the weight of the kanzashi and the discipline of the structure. After a week, and the hairstyle lasts a week if you're careful, sometimes longer, the oil is old. It mixes with the natural oils of the scalp, with the smoke from candles and incense, with the Yoshiwara powder and the rouge. The smell is sweet and slightly rancid at the same time, a warm, close smell that lives in your hair and has nowhere else to go. Incense, the house burns it constantly, specifically the variety that masks human smells, sweat, food, the 100 small animal odours of a house full of women living and working in close quarters. The incense is good quality. Fumiko doesn't cut corners on incense because incense is part of what clients are paying for when they walk through the door. The smell of Yoshiwara is the smell of expensive incense, and that smell is a promise of a different world. A world where ordinary rules don't apply, where money can buy beauty, and beauty can buy the illusion of being special. Underneath both of those, the room itself, old wood, the slight damp smell of tatami that has been washed and dried and washed again, but still carries years of moisture in its woven grass. Paper from the screens, the particular cold smell of a room with no fire in it at 4 a.m, and underneath all of that, so faint you only notice it sometimes when the wind is wrong, the canal. The moat that runs around Yoshiwara is not a beautiful moat. It's a ditch, a drainage channel, a place where the wastewater of the district ends up before it eventually makes its way out and away. On hot summer nights, the smell of it comes over the wall. Nobody talks about that either. You sit up slowly. The hair doesn't move. It's a structure, a system. The kanzashi pins, you're wearing the formal set, the ones with jade and coral and lacquered wood, the heavy ones that signal your status to anyone who sees them, hold everything in place with the mechanical precision of small architecture. You have 11 pins in your hair right now. You remember putting them in. You can feel their weight distributed across the structure, pulling slightly at the scalp in ways you've learned to read like a language. Pin number 3, the long gold one above your right temple, perfectly seated, the tatagushi comb at the crown, still in position. The meigushi decorative comb at the front. You can feel it hasn't shifted. The hair is intact. You've slept well. You exhale slowly through your nose and press your fingers lightly against the back of your neck, where the block has left its mark. Not a wound, not a bruise, just a slight redness, a slight warmth, a little echo of last night's architecture pressing into your flesh. Your Komuro is still asleep. She's curled up on her own small futon in the corner, 7 years old, hair in 2 simple loops, completely undone by sleep in the way children are undone by sleep. Mouth slightly open, one arm thrown over her face, utterly unconscious. Her name is Hana. She came to the house 3 months ago from somewhere in the countryside that she doesn't talk about much, though you've heard the outline of it from the other women. Debt, hunger, a father who made a decision. The same story, slightly different versions, over and over. She'll learn the trade here, as you did. In 10 years, she'll be where you are now. If she's lucky, if she works hard, if Fumiko decides she has the right qualities. Looking at her sleeping, you feel something that you don't quite have a name for. Not quite maternal, not quite grief, something in between. You leave her sleeping and go to the basin. The water in the basin is cold. This is Edo in what you think is probably October, though the precise date is less important to your life than the precise weather, and the weather right now says cold mornings, warm afternoons, the kind of slanted autumn light that makes everything look like a painting. Outside the walls, the maple trees would be turning. You know this theoretically. You haven't seen a maple tree outside of Yoshiwara in years. There are trees in here, the famous cherry trees that bloom every spring in a district where the women can't leave to see the real cherry trees anywhere else. Somebody in a previous century had that idea, bring the sakura inside the walls, and it's been the defining image of Yoshiwara ever since. Beautiful cherry blossoms surrounded by walls. Everybody knows what it means. Nobody says it directly. You wash your face carefully, because the oshiroi is on, the white powder. Lead-based, which nobody in this century knows is toxic, though the evidence is everywhere if you choose to read it. The women who have worn it for 20 or 30 years sometimes have a particular pallor to them that isn't just the makeup, a greyness around the eyes, a slowness in the hands. It goes into the skin, it accumulates. In another 200 years, people will understand exactly what it's doing, but right now it's simply the cost of a white face. And a white face is the standard of beauty. So you apply it every morning and wash it every night and don't ask questions about why. Satsuki's hands shake sometimes when she pours tea. You wash around the face, not directly on it. Remove what came off during the night. Apply fresh powder with a soft brush, blending from the jaw down the neck, fading at the collarbone where the kimono will cover it. The powder is mixed with water to a paste, then dried to a fine layer, chalky white. Your face disappears into it. This is both the point and the problem. The point, you become an image, a type, a symbol. The painted face of Yoshiwara is a face that has been doing this for centuries. The white, the red lips, the drawn or shaved eyebrows filled in high on the forehead. When clients look at you, they're looking at something that exists outside of ordinary time, a face that tells them, you are not in the regular world right now. You're in the floating world. Different rules apply. The problem, you're doing this every day, and you're 20 years old, and your skin is already not quite what it was when you were 15. Not damaged, not ruined. You're careful, you're methodical, you use the treatments Fumiko prescribes, but different. The powder sits in the fine lines around your eyes a fraction differently than it did 5 years ago. You notice this. Fumiko notices this. You don't discuss it. You should understand who Fumiko is before we go any further. She's 43 years old. She's been in Yoshiwara since she was 11. She was an oiran, one of the highest-ranking courtesans in one of the most important houses in the district, until she was 28, when she bought out her own contract, partly with money she'd saved over 17 years, and partly with help from a merchant from Osaka who had genuinely warm feelings for her and helped her without expecting anything in return, which is unusual enough in this world that everyone in the house knows the story. She has no debt. She owns this house. She owns the contracts of the women who live here, including yours. She has a face like polished wood, smooth, hardened, giving very little away. She was beautiful once in a way that you can still see the architecture of, the bones of the jaw, the set of the eyes. She has a burned scar on her left forearm from an accident with a brazier when she was 12 that she doesn't explain and you don't ask about. She is, by every measurement that matters in your world, successful, free, in charge. She's also at all times in the process of running a business that depends entirely on the physical appearance and cultural accomplishment of the women who live in it, which means that however warm she is, and she can be warm in specific circumstances, she is always, underneath that warmth, calculating. The calculation she applies to you. You are in your prime. You are, by the consensus of everyone who matters in Yoshiwara, among the top 3 Oiran currently working in this district. Your debts have been paid down substantially. If you continue at this rate, if your health holds, if you are careful, you might buy yourself out in another 4 years. Fumiko has told you this. She has also told you, in the same conversation, that 4 years is a long time, that a lot can happen, that she hopes you will continue to make excellent decisions. She looked at the window when she said this, not at you. You learned from that too. Let's talk about the pins, because the pins are important. Kanzashi is the general word. It covers a range of hairpins, from simple functional ones to extraordinary decorative objects that represent hundreds of hours of craftsmanship and costs that beg a belief. Yours are yours, not the house's. Yours. This is significant. In Yoshiwara, most of your expensive things belong to the house. The kimonos, the formal accessories, the furniture in your room. They are maintained at the house's expense and represent the house's investment in your appearance. But the kanzashi, the senior Oirans hairpins, are personal property. They are gifts mostly from clients, or they are things you have purchased yourself with money you've managed to keep out of the house's accounting, which is its own complex art. You have 47. You don't wear them all at once. On regular evenings you wear 7 or 8. On formal occasions, the processions, the banquets for important clients, you wear the full formal set, 11 pins arranged according to a precise protocol that communicates to anyone who knows how to read it your rank, your house, the occasion, and something about your mood. The full formal set takes 40 minutes to place. This morning you remove them carefully, one by one, setting each one on the padded stand Hannah will have arranged last night before she fell asleep. You work slowly. Pin number 3 comes out first, always this one first, then moving backwards and outwards, dismantling the structure from the inside. Each pin has a specific angle of removal, a specific direction of pull that won't catch or snag. If you pull wrong and break a pin, you feel it like a physical loss, not just the money, though the money's real, but the object itself, the memory of where it came from, the night someone placed it in your hand. Not everyone in Yoshiwara is cruel. Not every client is simply transacting. Some of them, a very few, have left something real behind them when they left. You are careful with the pins. Now the hair is loose. Or rather, now the structure of the hair is released, though the hair itself is still coated in bintsuke abura and still shaped, still holding some memory of last night's arrangement. The true loosening, the washing, the complete unbuilding, that happens at the hairdresser, which is not today. The hairdresser comes every 3 to 7 days, depending on the schedule, the weather, and whether there's a major procession coming up. When she comes, it takes 3 hours minimum, sometimes 4. Her name is Osuno. She is not one of the women of the house. She's a professional, a specialist, one of maybe a dozen women in Nido who do this specific work for the Oiran of Yoshiwara. She has arms like a labourer from holding them up over clients' heads for 20 years. She carries her tools in a wooden box, combs of different widths, the flat comb and the fine comb, the Mitsukoshi comb for smoothing, oil in small lacquered bottles, papers, ties, the specific Bintsuke abura that Fumiko orders from a particular maker in the city. When Osono is done with your hair, you're a different type of thing. The shimada, the hairstyle most associated with the Yoshiwara oiran, involves folding the main body of the hair up and over itself into a large loop or bun at the crown, then securing it with a series of pins and ties, and the strategic application of oil so that the whole structure holds its shape with an engineered rigidity. On a regular woman, a merchant's wife, a samurai household's daughter, the shimada is elegant and relatively simple. A small, neat loop, tastefully decorated with one or two pins. On an oiran of your rank, it is an entirely different proposition. The loop is large. The bun is built up significantly, sometimes with the addition of extra hair worked in. The kanzashi, when fully installed, add height and spread. The formal set fans out to either side of the head like the wings of something beautiful and impractical. The front section of hair is dressed separately, swept back and smoothed with oil until it gleams. When you are fully dressed, fully made up, fully coiffed, and standing in your formal shoes, you are approximately 2 feet taller than your natural height. 2 feet. Of that extra height, the shoes account for maybe 8 inches. The hair accounts for most of the rest. You are, in this state, a monument, a structure, something built as much as dressed. And now, at 7 in the morning, in your room, with Hana starting to stir in the corner and the distant sound of a cart outside the wall, the structure is dismantled, and you're just a young woman in an under kimono with oily hair and a sore neck. The contrast does not escape you. It never does. Good morning. She's upright before you finish saying it, which is how Kamuro wake up. Instantly and completely. A skill acquired through necessity. She's at your side in a moment, small hands already reaching for the pin stand to check the arrangement, confirming nothing was dropped in the night. She has dark eyes that miss nothing. In 3 years, when she's 10, she'll begin more formal training. Right now, she learns by watching, by doing small things correctly, and being corrected when they're wrong, by absorbing the 1,000 tiny protocols of this world through proximity. She carries your things when you walk the corridors. She sits behind you during formal calls, ready to refill tea. She sleeps in your room, which is both a service and a protection for her. A child alone in Yoshiwara is a vulnerable thing, and being attached to a senior oiran is the safest possible position. She checks the pins. Satisfied, she begins to fold the futon she slept on, her movements quick and economical. Is Osono coming today? She asks. Day after tomorrow. She nods, absorbs this. The day after tomorrow means today and tomorrow are fine. The hair is holding, don't push it. It means the procession Fumiko mentioned last week is probably scheduled for the day after Osono comes, once the hair is fresh. Hana is 7, and she's already learned to think 3 steps ahead. This place does that. There's miso, she says. I heard the kitchen. Your stomach responds to this before your mind does. You haven't eaten since last night, when you had a few bites of something, between the second client leaving and the third arriving, standing up in the corridor with a lacquer bowl because there wasn't time to sit down. That was 14 hours ago. Good, you say. The kitchen is 3 rooms away and down a short corridor. Yoshiwara houses, the real ones, the ones of any standing, are not small. This one has 12 rooms for women, a large common room, Fumiko's private quarters, storage rooms for kimonos and accessories, the kitchen, and a front receiving area where clients are welcomed, served tea, and introduced to the women of the house before any further arrangements are made. The house also has a garden, small but maintained, with a pine tree that Fumiko says was here before the house was built, though you're skeptical of this claim. And it has a bath, hot water twice a day, morning and evening. The bath is one of the things you value most about your current status. As a junior apprentice, you bathed when there was time and hot water remaining, which was not always. As a senior oiran, you bathe when you choose, with water the right temperature, and nobody hurries you out. But first, miso. The kitchen is the warmest room in the house in the mornings, a small fireplace going since before dawn, the smell of dashi stock and miso and rice. Okiyo, who cooks, is a stout woman of about 50, who treats everyone in the house with exactly the same level of affectionate irritation regardless of rank. She's been cooking here for 30 years. She knew Fumiko when Fumiko was a working oiran. She calls Fumiko by her given name to her face, which no one else does. "Sit," she says when you come in, not looking up from the pot. "You look terrible." "Good morning." "You look terrible and you didn't eat enough last night. I sent enough food for 3 people and the tray came back barely touched. It was busy. I know it was busy. Eat." She puts the bowl in your hands directly. Hot miso, tofu, wakame, a bowl of rice alongside, pickled daikon that makes your teeth ache in a way you've come to find intensely satisfying at this hour of the morning. You eat standing up, leaning against the kitchen wall, because sitting down in the full uchikake, the formal outer kimono, is a complicated operation involving arranging approximately 8 feet of fabric so none of it touches the floor in a way that will collect dust or grease. And at 7 in the morning, you don't have the patience. Hana sits on the step by the kitchen door, eating her own bowl with both hands, watching Okiyo work. She does this every morning. Okiyo tolerates it because Hana occasionally helps with small tasks without being asked, which Okiyo considers the highest possible form of virtue. "Procession next week?" Okiyo asks. "Probably. Fumiko hasn't confirmed the date. She'll confirm it today. There's a letter from the Miura house about it." Okiyo knows everything that happens in this house. This is not accidental. Information is currency here as much as anywhere else. And Okiyo, as the person who feeds everyone, hears every conversation that happens in the kitchen, which is to say every important conversation. You file this away. A letter from the Miura house means the Miura oiran is involved, which means the procession is not just for your house, it's a combined event, which means a larger procession, more ceremony, more visibility, more people watching. Your stomach tightens slightly, which has nothing to do with the miso. Let me explain what the oiran dochu is, because it's the centerpiece of this world, and it doesn't exist anywhere else. The oiran dochu is a public procession. The senior oiran of a house, one woman, possibly 2, attended by her kamuro and a small retinue, walks through the streets of Yoshiwara in full formal dress, in her best kimono, her full kanzashi, her higher status accessories. She is preceded and followed by specific attendants. She walks at a specific pace, in a specific manner. The specific manner is what makes it extraordinary. The high-ranking oiran walks in what's called the Soto Hachimonji style, outside figure 8. Each foot in its platform shoe traces an outward-pointing figure 8 pattern with each step. Toe pointing out, sweeping down and around, placed precisely, then lifting again, over and over. 3 hours of this, or however long the procession takes. The shoes are a kobo, wooden platform shoes with 2 small blocks at the bottom, rather than the usual single block. They're tall. The formal ones are lacquered. They weigh more than they look like they should. Every step requires perfect balance, perfect posture, perfect stillness of the upper body, because the hair cannot be disturbed, because the kimono must fall in exactly the right way, because any visible effort or stumble or adjustment of the bearing would shatter the entire image. And the image is the point. The oiran dochu is not entertainment. Or it is entertainment, but it's also advertisement, and it's also theatre, and it's also a very specific performance of power. The oiran in procession is saying, I am so accomplished, so skilled, so elevated, that I can walk through the streets of this city on dangerous wooden platforms in 15-kilogram formal dress, and not show a single sign of physical effort. I am not human in the way you are human. Come pay to be in my presence. The crowds that gather to watch, and they do gather every time people press 3 and 4 deep along the streets of Yoshiwara, understand all of this. They're not watching a parade, they're watching a declaration. You've done this procession 11 times. The first time was when you were 15, as a junior attendant to a senior oiran named Shiho who retired the following year. You walked behind her, carrying one of the decorative accessories, and you watched her feet and her face and tried to understand how it was possible to look that effortless. The second time, you were the one in the centre. You fell. Not completely, not to the ground. But you stumbled on a slightly uneven paving stone, and your right foot came down wrong, and for one terrible half-second your weight shifted in a way that sent a visible ripple through the entire construction, the hair, the fabric, the accessories, before you recovered. Fumiko's face, watching from the side, was perfectly still. After the procession, alone in your room, you sat for a long time looking at nothing. Then you practiced. For 2 weeks, every evening when the house was busy and nobody was particularly watching the back corridor, you walked the corridor in your formal shoes. Back and forth, the Soto Hachi Monji, over and over, your calves screaming, your back aching, the shoes biting into the soles of your feet in ways that left precise, specific marks that took a week to fade. The 11th procession, not a single stumble. Fumiko arrives in the kitchen at 8. She is, as always, already fully assembled. Hair in a simple but elegant knot, kimono pressed, face powdered but not as dramatically as the working women. She looks like what she is, the manager of a successful establishment, a woman of the Yoshiwara world who has moved from one kind of power to another. She looks at you. Letter from Miura House, she says. Okyo mentioned. A small silence. In another world, this would be a moment of mutual acknowledgement. We both know the kitchen hears everything. But in this world, you've learned not to be too obvious about your sources. The procession is set for the 12th, she says, 6 days. Combined with Miura and Sumiya House, 3 senior oiran in full procession. 3. That's significant. The last combined procession of 3 houses was 2 years ago, and it was the most attended one you'd been part of. The streets had been so crowded that the attendants had to physically clear the way. Akane from Sumiya, you ask? Fumiko nods. Akane. You know Akane. Not well. The senior oiran of different houses aren't exactly friends, though they're not exactly rivals either. It's more complicated than either word. They're people occupying the same narrow stratum of a very specific world, who understand each other's situation in a way that almost no one else can. You've spoken to Akane at 3 combined events. She has a quality of stillness to her that you've studied and been unable to fully replicate. Go get yourself something to eat, Fumiko says, which is her way of saying the meeting is over. Be ready for a sono in 2 days, full formal set. You don't need to be told twice. The bathwater is just the right side of too hot, which is exactly what you need. You slide in slowly, feeling the heat work into your shoulders, your neck, the muscles that have been gripping themselves against the cold and the awkward sleep, and the whole sustained physical performance of last night. There's a particular shoulder muscle on the left side. You've never learned its proper name, you just think of it as the troublesome one, that has been tight since approximately the age of 16 and never fully relaxes, not even in a bath like this. You try anyway. The steam rises from the water and collects against the wooden ceiling. You can hear the house waking up around you, movement in the corridor, voices somewhere distant, the sound of the kitchen continuing its work. Outside the walls of Yoshiwara, the city of Edo is in full morning operation. 500,000 people. The fish market at Nihonbashi, where the city's food comes in from the bay, where the smell of fresh-cut fish and seawater hits you before you can even see the stalls. The rice merchants whose districts are organised by the kind of rice they sell. The textile traders, the lacquerware sellers, the sword polishers with their whetstones set up outside their doors. All of this is happening outside. You have not been outside since. You think about it. 8 months. The last time was a supervised trip to a temple in the spring, one of the rare occasions when women of the Yoshiwara are permitted to leave the district under specific conditions. Festival days, some religious observances. You went to the Narita-san temple with Fumiko and 2 other women and 3 male escorts from the house, and you walked through streets you had to relearn like a foreign language, and someone called out to you from across the road, and you didn't look up because you'd been taught not to look up. 8 months. Before that, another year. You push this thought away because thinking about it doesn't help anything. Instead, you lift your hand and look at it. The water has softened the skin, and in the steam you can see the faint roughness at the knuckles from the dry autumn air, the tiny callus on your right middle finger from the way you hold a writing brush. You are a calligrapher of some skill. Poetry too. This is not incidental to your work. It is your work, or a significant part of it. The oiran of your rank is not primarily a physical commodity. She is an accomplishment, an education. The ideal of the Yoshiwara is that the highest tier courtesans are women of culture and refinement, who can match wits with scholars and entertain poets, and appreciate music at a level that requires genuine understanding, not just performance. Whether this ideal was ever purely realized is debatable, but it is earnestly maintained. You've been studying the shamisen since you were 9. You write in 2 different calligraphic styles, 3 if you're generous about your own abilities. You have read more poetry than most samurai scholars. You know the correct way to handle a tea bowl, the correct way to arrange seasonal flowers, the correct 47 protocols for addressing people of 47 different social ranks. These things were beaten into you, not with fists. Fumiko doesn't run that kind of house. It's something more like grinding. The constant pressure of correction, the 1,000 tiny ways of being told you've done something wrong until you can't imagine ever doing it wrong again, until the correct way is so deeply embedded in your nervous system that the wrong way feels physically uncomfortable. You emerge from this process able to compose a passable Waker poem about autumn leaves while simultaneously pouring tea correctly and maintaining an expression of serene interest. You're not sure what this makes you. You're not sure it matters what it makes you. She comes on the second morning as expected, but at 6 rather than the usual 8, because she has 3 houses to visit today, and one of them has 4 women who all need full sets. You're still in the bath when Hana appears at the doorway. "Oh, so no, I'll be out in a minute." She says she needs to start now. You get out of the bath. This is what 3 hours of hair preparation feels like. Osono begins with the washing. Not the casual morning rinse, a full cleaning, working through the oil and the accumulated matter of a week's worth of preserved styling. She uses rice water first, then a specific preparation she makes herself and doesn't discuss with anyone. Her hands are strong and certain. She's not gentle. Gentleness is not what's required. Thoroughness is required. Your scalp, after the first wash, feels raw, exposed, like skin that's been covered for too long. Then the combing begins, the wide comb first. Osono works from the ends of your hair toward the roots, section by section, moving with the steady patience of someone who has done this 10,000 times and has absolutely no interest in rushing. The camellia oil has been worked back in, fresh, warm, heated in a small pot over a portable brazier she's brought with her. The smell of the oil, warm and slightly sweet, fills your room. Hana has retreated to the corner where she's watching with the intensity of someone memorizing a text. She is memorizing a text. One day she will need to explain to a newcomer how this is done. Hold still. You weren't moving. But Osono says this every few minutes anyway, like a metronome. The oil is worked in with the flat of the comb, smoothed down, distributed, the hair absorbing it until each strand is coated, and the whole mass of your hair has taken on a different quality, heavier, more coherent, more willing to hold the shape Osono is about to impose on it. Then the shaping begins. Here is where it gets architectural. Osono divides your hair into sections with a deftness that implies she could do it blindfolded. The front section, the side sections, the main body at the back. Each section is temporarily secured with a small tie while she works the others, so the whole is controlled at every stage. The back body of hair is gathered and twisted and folded upward into the beginning of the Shimada loop. Here Osono's other hand works in counterpoint, smoothing, directing, while the first hand pulls the fold upward. It's two-handed, constant motion work, and it requires a level of tactile awareness that no amount of instruction can fully convey until you've developed the fingers for it. You have never developed the fingers for it. Osono has. The loop is secured. Pins go in. The structural ones first. Not the decorative kanzashi. Just the working pins that hold the architecture. They go in at specific angles, with a specific amount of inserted length. Too shallow and the structure shifts. Too deep and the pin catches painfully. Osono is never too shallow or too deep. 2 hours in, your neck is aching. Not from the wooden block, from sitting still while someone works above and around your head, from holding your chin at a specific angle, from resisting the instinct to shift, to move, to rotate the shoulder that's been tightening since the first pin went in. Breathe. You breathe. The left side is fighting. My shoulder. I know it's your shoulder. I've known it was your shoulder for 4 years. Do you want me to call someone for it? No. Then breathe. You breathe. The kanzashi begin going in at the 2.5 hour mark. These are the decorative pins placed according to a protocol that Asuno knows better than you do. She's dressed Oiran for 20 years. She has the protocol memorized in 3 dimensions. Coral at the front right, jade at the back left, the long gold pin above the right temple, the pair of small floral pins that flank the main comb. Each pin makes a small percussive sound as it seats, a soft, definitive T that you feel in your scalp as a tiny point of pressure. 11 pins, 11 points of pressure. A distributed weight across the top of your head that you will carry for the next 3 to 7 days. At 3 hours and 10 minutes, Osono steps back. You look in the polished bronze mirror that Hana is holding. The woman looking back has a face that's still bare. The oshiroi comes later, but a hairstyle that is a complete object, a finished work, something that took a professional 3 hours and specific materials and 2 hands working in continuous concert to produce. It will take you approximately 4 minutes to destroy it if you sleep wrong. Good, says Osono and starts packing her box. Here's something about wearing 11 kanzashi that nobody mentions in the more romantic descriptions of Yoshiwara. They move. Not wildly, not destructively, but the decorative pins, especially the longer ones with pendants, have a slight motion to them as you walk, as you turn your head. This motion is intentional. It's one of the things the style is designed to show. The gentle sway of the accessories as the oiran moves. It looks like stillness that contains motion, like controlled water. What it feels like is your hair pulling in 11 different directions simultaneously, each pull slight but constant, a persistent distributed ache across the scalp that never goes away, that you stop consciously feeling after a while, but that lives in the low register of sensation for every waking hour. You've never mentioned this to anyone outside the house. It's not the kind of thing that gets mentioned. The weight of the full formal kimono, by the way, is approximately 15 kilograms, maybe 12. It depends on the layers, the fabric, the season. In winter, with the additional padding for warmth, it can hit 18. For reference, a full sack of rice in Edo weighs around 60 kilograms. Wearing full formal oiran dress is roughly like wearing a quarter of that, wrapped around your body and arms and legs in a way that restricts movement and requires constant postural management to prevent it from shifting in ways that look wrong. The shoes add another kilogram or so. The hair and its accessories, maybe a kilogram, possibly more with a full formal set. You walk in all of this for 3 hours in the oiran doshu. You've been doing this since you were 15. 6 days. 6 days between the hair appointment and the procession, and every one of them spent in the constant awareness of what's on your head. It changes the way you move. You've been doing this for years, and it still changes the way you move. There's a background calculation, not quite conscious, more like a learned reflex, running at all times, an ongoing monitoring of the position of your head, the angle of your neck, the direction of any motion. Reaching for something on a high shelf. Pause, assess. Adjust the angle of the reach so the head doesn't tilt in a way that strains the structure. Looking down at something on a low table. Don't bend at the neck. Bend at the waist, keep the head level, lying down to sleep, the whole ritual we've already talked about. In the first year of wearing these styles, the adjustment was exhausting. Conscious effort applied to every movement. Now it's automatic, like walking. You don't think about how to walk, you just do it. The preserved hair is the same way. Your body has incorporated the parameters, but it's still there, a background hum, a constant low-level attention. The other women in the house are going through their own versions of this in the days before the procession, and you can feel it in the atmosphere of the place. A slightly heightened quietness, less casual movement in the corridors, fewer sudden gestures. Everyone is preserving something. Everyone is maintaining. On the third day, Yuki passes you in the corridor outside the common room. Yuki is 31 and has been in Yoshiwara for 20 years, which is longer than almost anyone else currently working here. She is not, and will not be, one of the 3 senior oiran in the procession. Her formal procession days ended 2 years ago, when her status shifted into a different kind of role. But she watches the preparations with the particular attention of someone who has done the thing many times and knows what it costs. She looks at your hair. Still holding? Since the 3rd day, she nods. Something approving in the nod, restrained. Then she says, more quietly, "How's the shoulder?" "The same. You should have the doctor look at it." After the procession, she makes a sound that expresses approximately everything she thinks about this answer without saying any of it directly. Then she continues down the corridor. You stand for a moment after she's gone. After the procession, the phrase you use for everything, back pain, eye strain, the small persistent cough you've had since the cold came in, the shoulder that's been tightening since before you can remember. After the procession, after the busy season, after the next thing. You've been saying it for 11 years. You start walking again, carefully, the pins shifting fractionally with each step. On the 3rd day of the preservation period, Fumiko calls you to her room. Her room is, in every visible respect, not much different from yours. Same tatami, same paper screens, same quality of cold autumn light coming through the window, maybe slightly larger, a better quality of brazier. The difference is in the details. A writing desk with a stack of ledgers that represents the financial life of every woman in this house, going back years. A small shrine in the corner with fresh offerings, fruit, a cup of water that she tends herself every morning. A single piece of calligraphy hanging in the alcove, a poem in Fumiko's own handwriting that she did years ago and has kept because she likes it, or because it means something specific to her that she's never explained. She's sitting with her tea when you come in, gestures to the space across from her. You sit. There's a document on the table between you. "Ihara-san will be attending the procession," she says. You look at the document. It appears to be a guest list, and he's requested an evening visit after. You process this. Ihara Masayuki is a Kyoto merchant, originally, who's been operating in Edo for 12 years. He's approximately 55 years old. He is, by any reasonable accounting, extremely wealthy. He's come to this house 4 times over the past 3 years, always at intervals, always planning far in advance. He knows how to conduct himself in Yoshiwara, which is both an observation and a compliment. Not everyone does. He once gave you, at the end of a visit, a kanzashi of unusual design with a coral pendant carved in the shape of a heron, and he presented it with a poem about spring water that was not bad. He has also, each of the 3 previous times, attempted to negotiate a fee for purchasing your contract. You have not made this easy for him. "How long is he staying in the city?" you ask. "A month. Business with the textile guilds." A month. Which means he's not in a rush. Which means he'll be patient about the contract negotiation, which is both better and worse than when he rushes it. "The procession visit is already confirmed," you ask. "Confirmed and paid." You look at the document again. "What does Fumiko-san want from this meeting?" you ask carefully. A small pause. Fumiko sips her tea. "I want you to think seriously about the contract." There it is. "I'm 4 years from..." I've done the numbers, she says. I know what I told you. But Ihara-san is offering something significant. And the question is whether 4 more years of this is what you actually want, when someone is willing to close it out now. Silence. The brazier ticks. Outside, distantly, someone is sweeping a corridor. What he wants, you say carefully, is specific. Yes, and what I would have, after, a house in Kyoto, staff, a comfortable situation. As what? Fumiko looks at the wall, the place she looks when she's about to say something complicated. As what he calls a private companion, in a house he owns, with an income and a degree of independence that most women in this district would find. I understand what he calls it. A pause. I'm not saying accept it, Fumiko says. I'm saying think about it. I'm saying that 4 more years of this. She gestures, a precise and economical movement that somehow encompasses the entire Yoshiwara, the whole apparatus of your existence, is not nothing. And I'm saying that some choices are easier to make when you still have things to choose with. You sit with that for a moment. I'll think about it, you say. It's not yes, and it's not no. Fumiko nods, like this is the answer she expected and finds acceptable. The procession timing. We're meeting the Miura house at the main gate at the hour of the horse. Akane's sedan will go last. You and Kiku from Miura will precede her. She shows you the order. You look at it. Is this Miura's preference or ours? Akane requested second position. You file this away. Akane walk in last. Final impression, maximum visibility, is a statement of her current status in the district. You walk in before her is also a statement. Which of the two of you is currently the more prominent name in Yoshiwara is a matter that various people have various opinions about, and neither of you have discussed it directly. But it still matters. Everything matters. Understood, you say. You wake before the bell. Not because the wooden block woke you. You've slept on it 5 nights in a row now, and the sleep is good, the hair intact, the neck resigned to its situation. You wake early because your body has been calculating for 6 days and has apparently decided that sleep is no longer a productive use of resources. 4 in the morning, perhaps. 5. The house is completely quiet. You lie on your back and stare at the ceiling and think about the walk. The Soto Hachimonji. The specific geometry of each step. The weight distribution through the platform shoe. The practiced stillness of the upper body while the feet perform their particular ritual. You've walked it in your mind perhaps 100 times in the past 6 days. Not with anxiety, more like an athlete reviewing form before competition, finding the adjustments, confirming the muscle memory. Hannah is breathing steadily beside you. It will take 4 hours to prepare today, not 3. The formal procession preparation adds time. The oshiroi applied more carefully in more layers, the rouge more precisely worked, the kimono selection and layering more elaborate, the final kanzashi arrangement reviewed and adjusted. 4 hours. Then the procession itself, which is approximately 2.5 hours of walking. Then the evening, the private visit, Ihara-san, the conversation that will eventually circle toward the contract. You're looking at 12 to 14 hours of sustained performance. Your left shoulder muscle is already tightening. The oshiroi today is a ceremony. Not literally. There's no religious element to it, despite the shrine-like quality of the preparation. It's a ceremony in the sense that every step is prescribed, every element deliberate, every application a specific act with a specific order and technique. The base layer, the oshiroi diluted to its thinnest, applied with a soft brush in long strokes from the centre outward. It dries in minutes in the cold morning air, leaving a faint, smooth layer that obliterates the natural variation of skin tone. The second layer, slightly thicker, concentrated at the forehead and cheeks, smoothed with the fingers of the off hand, the right hand with the brush working in small circles at the edges, the neck, 3 layers, down to the collarbone, with a precision fade at the edge that disappears under the collar of the kimono, the senryu effect at the back of the neck, 2 or 3 fingers drawn through the oshiroi before it fully dries, leaving thin lines of natural skin visible, like brush strokes, intentionally imperfect. This is specific to the formal style. The lines of skin against the white are considered particularly striking when the oiran moves and the collar shifts. This morning Osono's assistant, a young woman of about 18 who comes for formal occasions, does it for you. Her hands are slightly less certain than Osono's would be. You say nothing. The rouge, beni, red safflower dye, apply to the lips from a small lacquered pot with a fine brush, building the specific shape, full lower lip, slightly shaped upper, the corners precisely defined. The colour is dramatic, almost orange-red in certain lights. On the white face, it reads as simply, absolutely red. The eyebrows, shaved or covered with the base layer, then new eyebrows drawn higher on the forehead. This is the element that most radically transforms the face. The high, slightly stylized brows create an expression of serene surprise that is entirely artificial and entirely effective. The kimono. This takes 45 minutes alone. The underlayer first, the nagajuban, adjusted and smoothed. Then the main kimono. Yours today is a deep crimson with a pattern of white chrysanthemums that Fumiko selected 3 weeks ago for this specific procession, placed over the shoulders and pulled forward. The obi, the wide sash, is applied last, built up in layers of specific folds that, when complete, form an elaborate decorative structure at the back. The bow in front rather than the back. This is the distinctive Yoshiwara style, the marker that identifies an Oiran to anyone on the street, the obi tied in the front. When you first learned this as a child, you asked why. The answer you were given was practical, because it's faster to adjust, which is true. The answer nobody gave you then, which you understand now, because it signals to any observer exactly what this garment is and why it's tied where it is. It's a statement of availability, designed to be read instantly from a distance. The kimono weighs what it always weighs, 12 kilograms today. It's autumn, the outer layer is lined, the padding is in. The obi adds more. You stand while the assistant works on the obi. She's slower than you'd like. Pull it tighter, you say, and your voice is flat, not unkind. She pulls it tighter. The obi presses against your lower ribs and you breathe into the restriction, adjusting. Then the shoes. The okobo, the formal platform shoes, are waiting on the step outside your room, having been cleaned and checked this morning. They're lacquered black with the distinctive double block base, and they are, in appearance, almost absurdly impractical. The first time you wore them, you were 12. You fell over within 90 seconds. You don't fall over now. But they are not comfortable in any conventional sense. The wooden sole is rigid. The contact point with the foot is a padded thong across the toes. No heel support, no arch support. Nothing that a modern person would consider basic podiatric consideration. You balance on a platform elevated by 2 wooden blocks and maintain that balance purely through years of accumulated muscle memory and the grip of your toes. In the morning damp, the lacquer is cold under your feet. You fasten the thong, stand. Everything shifts upward. The hair is now even further above the world. The air at this height is fractionally different, or perhaps you simply imagine it. Hana is looking up at you from the step below with an expression that you recognize. She's measuring, calculating how many years until she's standing where you're standing. How do I look? You ask her. This is not vanity. It's a systems check. She walks around you once looking at the kimono fall, the obi, the kanzashi arrangement, the shoes. The third pin from the left, she says. It's sitting slightly forward. You can feel it once she says it. A fraction off. You reach up carefully, locate the pin by touch, apply a very slight correction. TK. Better? Better. You put your hand on her head briefly. Not quite a ruffle, just a recognition. And she ducks away from the gesture in a way that is probably supposed to seem annoyed and doesn't quite. You walk through the house in procession order. The two kamuro ahead of you, your personal attendant to the left, and behind you, a young male employee of the house who will manage the crowds and handle anything that comes up. The house faces one of the main streets of Yoshiwara, and when you step through the front door into the street, the world is already waiting. Not the procession crowds yet. Those will be on the main route, but the residents of Yoshiwara are out. The women from other houses, some in formal dress, some not. The men who run the tea houses and noodle stalls. The various service people who pass through the district in the mornings. Clients who've come early to watch. They all stop when you step out. Not dramatically. Not with fanfare. They just stop whatever they're doing and look. You have been looked at in this way since you were 15. You are completely accustomed to it. You do not show this on your face. You do not show anything on your face. The procession forms. You meet Kiku from Miura House at the side street junction. She's already in position, younger and slightly nervous in a way she's suppressing very well. Her kanzashi is beautiful, newer than yours but well chosen. You give her the smallest nod of acknowledgement that constitutes warmth in this context. Then the wait. Akane arrives last from the Sumire house, which is 3 streets over. She comes round the corner and the effect is, there is no other word, impressive. She's 32, 10 years working at this level, and she has the kind of absolute physical command of her formal dress that makes you understand why she requested the final position. She could anchor any procession. Her eyes find yours across the space between you. A nod. Small. Precise. You return it. And then, the hour of the horse, the bell, and the procession begins. Right foot first, toe out, sweep down and forward, weight transfers, platform rock slightly, catches, the foot places, left foot, toe out, sweep down, places. This is the Soto Hachimonji. This is what it feels like from inside it. A controlled rocking, a deliberate rolling of the weight, a constant balancing act performed at the pace of a very slow walk, while every muscle above the hips holds absolutely still. The street of Yoshiwara opens up before you. The crowds are already 3 deep on either side. You've done this 11 times and the crowds still do something to the air, a thickening, a pressure, a particular quality of held breath that you can feel on the back of your neck. Hundreds of people watching. Some of them have come from districts of the city that require an hour of walking. Some of them have planned this morning around this procession. Some of them are seeing it for the first time. They are perfectly silent. This is the convention, the established behaviour of the crowd at an orandoshu. No one calls out. No one pushes forward. They watch in a collective stillness that is itself a kind of performance, as if the spectators understand they are part of the theatre. Right foot. Sweep. Places. The kamuro move beside you in their own smaller version of the walk, their steps coordinated. their faces arranged in expressions that won't embarrass the house. Hana is on your left, and she's doing it perfectly. At 7 years old, walking her second procession as a Kamuro, she is doing it perfectly. You don't look at her, can't look at her without breaking the line of your gaze, which must be directed forward and slightly above the crowd. But you know she's there. You can feel the small correctness of her presence. Left foot, sweep, places. The cherry trees are bare now. The famous cherry trees of Yoshiwara, whose blossoms every spring bring crowds even larger than the procession crowds, are standing in their late autumn nakedness, branches black against the pale sky. Between them, the lanterns of the houses create pools of warm light at intervals along the street. Your neck is beginning to ache. Not seriously, not in a way that will show. But about 45 minutes into the walk, the accumulated tension of holding the head level, the weight of the kanzashi, the constant small corrections required by the platform shoes, it's all finding a home in that specific left shoulder muscle, the troublesome one. You breathe, the street turns, another crowd, right foot, sweep, places. There's a sound, very occasionally from the crowd. Not a voice, just a breath, a collective exhalation, the specific sound of people witnessing something that meets or exceeds what they came to see. You hear it now as you move through a particularly dense section near the main gate road, the crowd pressed tight, faces close enough to see. You don't look at them. You look at a point in the middle distance above the crowd, focused but not focused, a visual practice developed over years that allows you to maintain the expression of serene attention without actually engaging with anything in particular. Your feet are burning. The contact points at the base of the toes, where the thong wraps, are experiencing the particular compressed friction that means tonight there will be blisters. Or not quite blisters. You've toughened past blisters, but the precursor sensation, the warning, you walk through it. This is what the procession is. Not just beauty, not just display. This is the completion of a test. Can you maintain this for 2.5 hours? Can you keep the face still and the posture correct and the walk precise while your feet burn and your neck aches and the weight of the hair and the kimono becomes a constant presence at the edge of sensation? If yes, you belong here. You are what you appear to be. Right foot, sweep, places. The route of the procession takes you past a section near the northern end of the district, where the ground is slightly higher, a natural elevation of maybe 3 or 4 feet, a gentle rise in the land that predates the walls and everything built on top of them. There's a section of walkway here that sits at the top of this rise, and for approximately 30 steps, you are at the highest point of the Yoshiwara street system. It's not dramatic, not a hilltop, not a rooftop. But the street below you opens up slightly, and for 30 steps you can see more than usual. The crowd below and ahead, the rooftops of the houses, the bare cherry trees, the blue-grey autumn sky above all of it, that particular Edo autumn sky that holds the cold and the smoke and the smell of the city simultaneously. Beyond the walls, which here, at this slight elevation, you can just see the top of, the city continues. Rooftops, smoke from 1,000 braziers and cooking fires, the distant glint of what might be the river. Ido, 500,000 people. You have been in this district for 11 years, and this view, this small, not particularly dramatic view from a slight elevation on a procession route, is most of what you see of it. Your feet burn, your neck aches, the hair is intact, you look forward, right foot, sweep, places, 2 hours and 20 minutes, You complete the circuit. The procession returns to the point of origin. A kane behind you completes the route. The crowd disperses. The kimuro relax visibly. Small shoulders dropping, faces doing the things faces do when they're not performing. You step off the main street and into the side passage that leads to the house's rear entrance. The door closes behind you, and then, only in the interior corridor where no client or observer is present, you allow yourself to stand still for a moment, hands at your sides, doing nothing at all. Your feet, in the shoes, feel like they've been pressed in a vice. Your shoulders are a single continuous knot from the base of the skull to the blades. The kimono, which has been correctly arranged and correct in every way for 2.5 hours, is pressing against your lower ribs with the particular persistence of a well-tied obi that wants you to know it's still there. Okio appears in the corridor. She looks at you. She disappears back into the kitchen. 2 minutes later, she reappears with a cup of tea and a small cloth soaked in warm water. She hands you both without speaking. You drink the tea in 2 swallows and press the cloth against the back of your neck and stand there until the warmth works into the muscle. "Good walk," Okio says. "Thank you." "Kiku from Miura House. She's good." "Yes." "Not as good as you." "You don't respond to this, because responding to this would be complicated and you're tired." Okio takes the cup and cloth back. "Ihara-san at the hour of the dog," she says. "Fumiko says you have 3 hours before." 3 hours. You look down at the Okobo shoes. They need to come off. You sit on the edge of the raised floor in the corridor and remove the shoes. The relief is... There isn't a word for the relief of removing those shoes after a full formal procession. The blood returning to the toes, the slight cold of the floor against the hot skin, the momentary dizziness from the shift in blood pressure when you sit down after hours of standing. You put your feet flat on the floor and breathe. Hana, who has removed her own smaller formal shoes and appears to be inspecting her own toes with scientific intensity, looks over at your feet. The right side? Yes. She goes to the small cabinet in the corridor, gets the salve that lives there, brings it back, sits down beside you and without being asked applies it to the contact points with small, careful hands. You look at the top of her head, the simple loops of her hair, the plain kanzashi, 7 years old. She concentrates on the salve. "You did well today," you tell her. She doesn't look up, but something in the set of her shoulders changes, just slightly, just a fraction. "Second procession," you say. "Much better than my second." "How was your second?" she asks, because she genuinely wants to calibrate where she stands. "I stumbled on the northern turn." She considers this. "I didn't stumble," she says carefully. "No," you say. "You didn't." She finishes with the salve and replaces the lid and goes to put it back. Her back is very straight. Unself-consciously, naturally straight. She'll be very good at this. The thought lands with the particular weight of something complicated. You sleep for approximately 90 minutes on the block, still in the formal kimono because there isn't time to remove it and remake it properly before the evening, and because the formal kimono is appropriate for an evening visit in any case. Not actually sleep. A kind of suspended stillness just below consciousness that your body has learned to use. The heart rate drops. The muscles do their partial version of release. It's not rest in the full sense, but it's something. It's the hour between performances. Hana sits in the corner with a book. You've been teaching her to read, partly because Fumiko approved it as part of her education, and partly because you have a memory of being 9 years old in this district and not knowing how to read. and the specific quality of powerlessness that comes from not being able to read a document that concerns you. You don't want Hannah to have that. The bell sounds. You wake. He arrives precisely at the hour of the dog, which is the kind of precision that marks a man who takes Yoshiwara seriously. Not early, which would be presumptuous. Not late, which would be rude. Exactly on time, which communicates, I have thought about this. He is 55 and looks it, not decrepit, not declining, but settled into the particular solidity of a man who has spent decades eating enough good food and sleeping in comfortable surroundings. He has a face that was probably unremarkable when he was young and has become interesting through the accumulation of a life. Grey at the temples, good hands, merchants' hands, not scholars. The hands of someone who's handled goods and invoices and measuring tools, not just brushes. He bows correctly in the receiving room, at exactly the correct depth for his status relative to yours. You return it at exactly the correct depth. Tea is served. This is the first part of every proper Yoshiwara visit. The tea, not rushed, not abbreviated. The quality of the tea service signals the quality of the house. Fumiko's house uses good tea, good water, good ware. The bowls that come out for Ihara-san are old raku work, something that a client of his standing will recognize and appreciate. He holds the bowl correctly. The procession was beautiful, he says. I watched from the Suru house's balcony. Thank you for attending. The Oiran from Sumira House, Akane, very accomplished. She is. A pause. He's not going to pursue the Akane topic, having understood that you won't be drawn into comparisons. He redirects. The chrysanthemum kimono was well chosen for the season. Fumiko-san selected it. She has excellent taste. You drink your tea. He looks at the calligraphy hanging in the alcove, a seasonal poem that Fumiko changes monthly. Autumn moon, he reads aloud. Cool water, high pine, the distance between stars is nothing and everything. Basho, roughly, you say. He looks at you, a slight shift in his expression. Not surprise exactly. He knows you're educated. He's just been reminded of the specific quality of it. Not basho, he says. No, you're right. My mistake. He isn't right, actually, but the pleasure of conceding a point you know you've held correctly is its own small exercise in the technique of this world. You let people feel they've shown you something, and they become, if not generous, then more open. He becomes more open. The conversation moves. The textile guild business in Edo. The current prices of various goods. The political situation he's seeing from his Kyoto perspective. He talks like a man who has thought about things and formed opinions, and has almost no one in his daily life who will genuinely engage with those opinions rather than simply agree. You engage. This is, in the reductive accounting that sometimes describes the Yoshiwara world, the main thing he's paying for. Not the physical, though there's that too. Not simply the company, though there's that. But this. A conversation with someone who will actually think. 2 hours in, he brings up the contract. Not aggressively. More like a man approaching a known difficult subject with the combination of hope and resignation of someone who's tried this before. I've spoken with Fumiko-san, he begins. I know. She told me you're still thinking about it. I am. I'd like to understand what you're thinking about. What are you thinking about? You look at the brazier for a moment. What you're thinking about is a house in Kyoto, which is a beautiful city that you've never seen, which is a house that you would not own, which is an income that depends on him remaining living and solvent and interested. which is a degree of independence that is described as independence by the person offering it, and independence by someone else's definition looks different. What you're thinking about is 4 more years in this district. 4 more years of processions and wooden pillows and 12-kilogram kimonos, and mornings when you examine the powder settling into lines you didn't have at 15. 4 more years of calculating everything constantly, including this conversation. What you're thinking about is what you'd do with actual freedom. Not Ihara-san's version of freedom. Real freedom. A small shop, perhaps. A calligraphy teacher's practice. A house you own in a place you choose. That version of freedom costs more than 4 years. It costs possibly 10. Possibly 15. Possibly, if the luck is bad, it costs everything and arrives as nothing. I'm thinking about what the word private companion means in practice, you say. He's quiet. I'm thinking about the specific terms, the income. What happens if you die before me? What happens if your situation changes in any way? I've prepared documentation, he says. I've not seen it. I'll have it sent to Fumiko-san this week. I'd like to see it myself. A pause. That seems reasonable, he says. Something shifts between you. Not warmly exactly, but a rebalancing. He'd come in expecting a certain kind of conversation, the usual Yoshiwara negotiation, mediated through the house. He's now in a different kind of conversation. He's not displeased, you think. Some men are displeased by directness. He seems, if anything, more present. You're careful, he says. Yes. I would expect no less, a beat. You should know that I'm not. This isn't a casual offer. I've been coming here for 3 years. I know. I thought about it seriously. I believe you. I'd like you to think about it equally seriously. You look at him. I am, you say. And for once this is simply true. The hour of the rat, just after midnight. He leaves with correct bows and the promise of the documentation. You sit in the receiving room for a few minutes after the sound of his footsteps fades. Fumiko appears in the doorway. Well? He's sending documentation. I know. He told me already. A pause. What did you tell him? That I'm thinking about it. And that I want to see the documentation myself. Fumiko looks at you for a long moment. She has the expression she sometimes gets. Not quite proud, not quite concerned. Something that holds both. He agreed? He seemed to find it reasonable. She nods. Then you're doing it right, she says. Back in your room. Hana has been asleep for hours. You remove the kimono. This takes 10 minutes, done carefully, each layer folded and set aside. The obi unwound, 12 kilograms of silk reduced to a neat stack of fabric. The oshiroi removed with the specific preparation Fumiko orders, a gentle oil-based wash that doesn't strip the skin. Your face, without the makeup, in the small mirror by the brazier. It's a face that's been making a specific expression. Serene, composed, attentive, for approximately 16 hours today. The muscles beneath the skin know this expression the way your feet know the sotoachi monji, by repetition, by accumulated practice. Right now, alone, you let them relax. The face in the mirror changes when you do this. Slightly. In ways that probably aren't visible to anyone else. A fractional softening around the eyes, a release at the jawline. This is your actual face. You look at it. Then you set the mirror face down and go to the wooden block. You position it by touch now. The angle, the height. You've done this perhaps 2,000 times. The fresh paper is in place on the neck rest. You run your thumb across it, smooth, clean, slightly cool. You lie down. The neck finds the rest. The hair, intact, structural, 11 pins correctly seated, hangs free behind you, your hands at your sides, your spine long, relatively straight. Outside, Yoshiwara is not quiet. It never fully quiets until well past midnight. The last client's been seen out, the last lanterns lowered, the last music from the distant houses fading away. Right now there's still the sound of shamisen from somewhere further in the district, a particular melody you've heard so many times you've stopped registering it consciously. A dog barking somewhere across the canal, the distant sound of wood being moved in the kitchen, or Kyo working on tomorrow's prep, the very faint smell of the canal because the wind has shifted. You're aware of all of it, and then less aware, and then the edges of things begin to soften. Your neck aches where the block meets it. This is normal. This is always. Your feet burn slightly, a warm, dull complaint from the contact points. This is normal. Your left shoulder is, well, that's just your left shoulder. You've stopped expecting anything from it. The shimada holds, the pins hold, the hair holds. You've slept on this block for 11 years, and tomorrow you will sleep on it again, and the night after that. This is what it costs. This is what the image costs, and the reputation, and the status, and the possibility. Still uncertain, still far away, but real, of someday owning something that can't be taken. The wooden block presses against your neck. You breathe. There's a moment, just before sleep fully takes you, when something clarifies. Not every night, but sometimes. Tonight it's this. The wooden block is not a metaphor. You've heard people, clients, occasionally who want to be poetic, describe the Yoshiwara world in metaphorical terms. The floating world, the world of illusion, the gilded cage. These aren't wrong exactly, but they're from the outside. From inside, the wooden block is just a wooden block. It's the practical solution to a practical problem. The hairstyle must survive the night. The block makes that possible. The block is uncomfortable. You sleep on it anyway. Everything in your life is like this. The shoes are uncomfortable. You wear them anyway. The 12 kilograms of kimono are heavy. You wear them anyway. The oshiroi contains something you can't name that does something to your skin. You can feel but not describe, and you apply it every morning because a white face is not negotiable. The practice of holding an expression for 16 hours produces a specific fatigue in the face muscles that lives in the background of every long day. You do all of it anyway. Not because you are simply enslaved, though the contract is real, and the walls are real, and the gate does close, but because somewhere between the age of 9 and the age of 20, between the girl who arrived frightened with someone else's debt and the woman lying on this block right now, a decision was made. Not a dramatic decision, not a single moment, more like a daily renewal, a choice made over and over again so many times it became something else, became this. You are very good at your work. This is true in the way that most true things are, simply, plainly, without needing ornamentation. You are among the best at what you do. In a district full of women who are accomplished, you are notable. The clients who come to you specifically, who request you by name, who are willing to wait weeks for an appointment, they're not coming for something general. They're coming for something particular, something that took you 11 years to build. You built it on a wooden block. Let it come. It's been here at the edges for a while, waiting politely, which is more courtesy than the day showed you. Let it come. The shamisen from down the street plays itself out. The dog stops barking. Okio finishes in the kitchen and the last sounds from that direction go quiet. Yoshiwara settles, not silent. It's never quite silent here. The human proximity is too dense for complete silence. But it settles. The active noise becomes the passive noise. The wind against the paper screens, the occasional footstep in a distant corridor, the building itself making the small sounds that buildings make at the end of a day. Your eyes are closed. The block is there. You're not sleeping so much as you're lying on it correctly. And then, gradually, the way a light dims rather than cuts out. You're not lying on it correctly anymore. You're simply lying. The block is still there, but you've stopped noticing it. The hair, intact, structured, the kanzashi in their arranged positions, is something you no longer know about. The feet, salved, warm, the not quite blisters beginning to calm, are something you no longer know about. The left shoulder, the troublesome one, the perpetual one, is, for the first time today, not troubling. In the centuries after this night, the Yoshiwara will change. Then it will decline. Then it will be dismantled by law, the licensed quarter officially abolished, the walls taken down. Meiji-era authorities in the 1870s will close the yukaku under new rules about human trafficking and contractual debt. The Yoshiwara's particular architecture, social as much as physical, will begin its long disassembly. The wooden block, the specific lacquered neck rest with its paper padding, these will become museum objects, items in collections, displayed behind glass with small explanatory cards that describe what they were for and who used them. People will stand in front of these objects and try to imagine sleeping on them. Most of them will conclude that they could not. The hairstyle itself will become the domain of specialists. Theatre, ceremony, festivals where people occasionally dress in period costume and walk in procession in the style of the Oiran doshu. The shoes still exist. The walk is still taught. There are women who practice it for performance, for preservation, for the specific kind of pride that comes from carrying difficult knowledge forward through time. The cherry, trees in Yoshiwara, the famous ones, the ones that were planted inside the walls for the women who couldn't leave to see them, those trees are gone now. The walls are gone. The district that existed as a specific, bounded world for 300 years is now an ordinary neighbourhood in a vast city that would barely recognise itself in the area you're living through. But the logic of it, the idea that beauty requires sacrifice, that what looks effortless costs everything, that the image and the reality are different documents describing the same body, that logic doesn't go away. It just finds different containers, different forms, different women in different centuries, doing different versions of the same calculation. The wood of the block, if it survived, if it didn't rot or burn or get discarded in one of the fires that periodically remade Edo, would hold the memory of pressure, the grain pressed smooth by the repetition of the same neck, the same weight, the same hours. It doesn't know it's a museum object. It's just a block. You wake the morning after the procession with your body making a complete accounting of itself. The feet, worse than last night, as expected. The not quite blisters have settled into a low-grade complaint, the kind that doesn't stop you but accompanies every step like an unwanted comment. The right small toe is specific in its grievance. You press it gently with your thumb, assess, decide it's manageable. The neck, the standard ache from the block, plus the additional strain of 2.5 hours of formal posture. Not sharp, just present. The muscle that runs from the base of your skull to your left shoulder has made its feelings about yesterday very clear. The lower back, the obi, always the obi, the morning after a full dress day. 12 kilograms of layered silk held in place by a structure tied firmly around your midsection for 12 hours leaves a specific kind of soreness, a deep muscular fatigue that lives below the ribs. You lie on the block and conduct this inventory without urgency. This is normal. This is always. You have done this inventory every morning for 11 years, the catalogue of what the previous day cost, the assessment of what today will require, and it has become as automatic as breathing. You're not distressed by the accounting, you're simply accurate about it. Hena is already awake, already folding her futon with the brisk efficiency of a child who's learned that mornings are not for lingering. "How are your feet?" you ask. She considers this seriously. "The left one has a mark from the thong," she says. "Here." She shows you, turning the foot, where the leather has left a faint red line across the base of the first 2 toes. "Salve," you say, "before you put shoes on today." "I know. I know you know. I'm telling you anyway." She gets the salve. This is how things are passed between you. Not formal instruction. You're not formally her teacher. That's not how the Kimuro system works. But something more lateral. More like the way you learned yourself. By proximity to someone who knew. By watching hands and feet. By absorbing the 1,000 small decisions that add up to the knowledge of how to live in this specific world without being destroyed by it. You watch her apply the salve carefully, in the right amount to the right place, and you don't say anything, because there's nothing to correct. Yuki finds you in the corridor after breakfast. She's carrying a bolt of indigo-dyed cotton, household fabric, the practical kind, not the silk you wear for work, and she looks like someone who's been doing useful things since before dawn, which she probably has. "Come with me a minute," she says. This is not a request exactly. With Yuki, nothing is exactly a request. She's been in this house longer than anyone except Fumiko, and she has developed over 20 years a particular way of speaking that bypasses the question of whether you have a choice. You follow her to the small storage room at the back of the house, the one that smells of cedar wood and old lacquer, where the bolts of fabric and the spare household items are kept. She sets down the indigo cotton, turns to look at you. "Shoulder," she says, "it's fine. I watched you walk the north turn yesterday, the left side pulled. Just slightly. Just slightly is how things start." She moves around you without ceremony, puts her hands on your left shoulder, presses with her thumbs in a specific place. The pain is... "Breathe," she says. You breathe. She works in silence for several minutes. Her thumbs press and release, finding the specific knotted places, working against them with a directness that is not gentle but is effective. She learned this somewhere, you don't know where, she's never explained, and she applies it to herself and occasionally to the other women in the house, with the matter-of-fact practicality of someone managing a resource. You are a resource. So is she. This is not depressing if you think about it correctly. "You've been not treating this for a year," she says. "More like 2. "More like 2, she repeats, with a flatness that says everything. The thumb finds a particularly resistant point, and for a moment your vision whites slightly at the edges. "After the procession," you say. "That was yesterday. After the season." She's quiet for a moment. "I said, after the season, every season for 6 years, she says finally. "Then one morning I couldn't hold my arm up past my shoulder, couldn't play the shamisen. Couldn't assist clients with the kimono fastening. A pause. Couldn't perform. You know this story. Everyone in the house knows this story. Fumiko had a doctor who fixed it, you say. Fumiko had a doctor who fixed it partially, Yuki corrects. After 3 months of treatment that I should have started 2 years earlier. She presses again. You exhale sharply. If I'd started 2 years earlier, I'd have been fully recovered in a month. Instead, I lost a season and came back at 70%. 70% is still 70% is 70%. She steps back. I'm telling you this because nobody told me. They told me rest. They told me manage it. They told me after the season, after the procession, after. Nobody said, you're injuring yourself slowly enough that you won't notice until it is done. You turn to look at her. Yuki at 31 has the particular quality of someone who has absorbed everything this world has to offer and come out of it not bitter exactly. Bitterness implies continued surprise at disappointment, and Yuki is long past being surprised, but clear, precise, like something that's been refined past the point of impurities. She was extraordinarily beautiful when she was younger by all accounts. She's still striking now, in a different way, the kind of face that has become more itself over time rather than less. I'll see Fumiko's doctor this week, you say, before the next procession. Before the next procession. She nods, picks up the indigo cotton, moves toward the door. You walked well yesterday, she says, not looking back. Better than last year. She goes. You stand in the cedar-smelling room for a moment. Better than last year. From Yuki, this is approximately equivalent to anyone else applauding at length. Here is something about the Yoshiwara that they don't tell you in any poetic way, that doesn't appear in the woodblock prints or the sentimental stories about the floating world. It was designed. Not in the organic way that most human institutions emerge, by accident and precedent and accumulated habit, but deliberately, intentionally, by a specific person at a specific moment, with specific goals. The year was 1617, roughly. The man was Shoji Jinemon, a brothel owner who petitioned the Tokugawa shogunate with a proposal: concentrate all licensed prostitution in one location, a single, walled, supervised quarter, one gate in and one gate out, women registered, movement controlled. The shogunate agreed. Their reasons were practical, in the way that powerful institutions are always practically motivated. Consolidation is easier to tax, easier to police, easier to maintain the boundaries between the floating world and the ordinary world that you theoretically don't want blurred. Shoji Jinemon got his license, got his quarter, got his monopoly on the largest city in the world's most profitable vice. He called it Yoshiwara, the Reed Plains, a name drawn from the marshy land outside the city's edge where the original quarter was established, before a fire in 1657 burned most of the old city, and everything was moved to the new Yoshiwara, the new Reed Plains, where it still stands now, where you stand now. The walls are a regulatory tool. The gate is a ledger. The women inside are, in the formal language of the shogunate's licensing documents, licensed entertainment workers, their contracts, registered with the appropriate authorities, their debts legally enforceable, their movements subject to the rules of the quarter, in the informal language of everyone who actually lives here. You are in a box, a beautiful box sometimes, a box with good food and extraordinary skills and access to a world of culture that ordinary women never touch, but a box, the Reed Plains. In October, when the wind comes right, You can sometimes smell the actual reed marshes somewhere beyond the walls, the cold, green, brackish smell of water and mud and autumn vegetation. It comes through the canal smell and the incense smell and all the other smells of Yoshiwara and lands for a moment as something completely different. Something that was here before all of this. You've always liked that smell. You can't say why. Fumiko's ledger is a physical object you have never held, because it's Fumiko's, but you know what it says about you with reasonable precision. You were brought into this house at the age of 9, which is itself a financial transaction. A specific sum paid to your family as an advance against your future earnings, creating a debt that became the foundation of your contract. The sum was not large by Yoshiwara standards. Your family was rural, not well connected, had no particular leverage in the negotiation. You were 9. You had no leverage at all. Interest accrues. This is the part that the romantic versions of the Yoshiwara story tend to elide. The debt doesn't stay fixed at the original purchase price. It grows. Training costs money. The shamisen teacher, the calligraphy instructor, the tea ceremony lessons, the dance master who came to the house every third day for 4 years. Food costs money. Clothing, the working kimonos, the accessories costs money. Medical care costs money. The house advances all of these costs. The house adds them to your ledger. Fumiko runs a house that is considered, by the standards of the district, scrupulously fair. She charges what things actually cost. She doesn't inflate the interest. She allows you to track the accounting yourself, which many houses don't. And still, when you were 15 and first understood the full picture of what was owed, added up the training and the clothing and the food and the original purchase price and the interest on all of it, you felt something that you can only describe as vertiginous, a dizziness of scale. The number was very large. The number would take years to work down. You have worked it down. 11 years of working it down, incrementally, percent by percent, every successful client visit reducing the principal, every formal procession that brought new clients to the house, every piece of calligraphy sold or poem written or shamisen performance that brought money back through the gate. You are 4 years from zero. 4 years if nothing goes wrong, if the health holds, if the fashion doesn't shift in a way that devalues your particular kind of accomplishment, if no extraordinary expense comes up, if Fumiko's calculation remains accurate. 4 years. Ihara-san is offering to erase those 4 years now in exchange for the specific contract he described, which you have not yet seen. You think about this as you do the morning counting of the shop's inventory. Not your job, technically, but a task Fumiko sometimes asks you to assist with because your counting is accurate and you don't steal, which is a combination rarer than it should be. The brushes, the lacquer pots, the supply of bintsukabura, the bolts of fabric, you count and think simultaneously. 4 years is a long time. 4 years is also not a long time. It depends on what unit of measurement you're using. 3 days after the procession, on an afternoon when the house is quiet, Fumiko out on business, several of the women napping, Hana sent to the common room with embroidery. You do something you do rarely. You go up to the roof. Not the main roof. There's no access there. But the lower extension at the back of the house, above the storage rooms, reachable by a slightly precarious sequence of steps that Yuki showed you 6 years ago with the precise confidence of someone who has been going up there for years and sees no reason to keep it a secret. The roof is maybe 4 feet by 6 feet of flat-covered surface with a low parapet on 3 sides. It overlooks the interior of the district, not the street, not the main gate, but the internal courtyard spaces and garden areas and the backs of the houses that face the other direction. You can see the top of the wall from here, just the top, not past it. And above the wall, sky. The same sky that's above the rest of Edo. The same sky above the rice paddies and the mountains and the coast. The same sky that extends unimpeded in every direction away from this walled rectangle of the world. The light today is the particular late afternoon light of October in Edo. Low and amber gold. The kind of light that makes even the back walls of warehouse storage rooms look briefly beautiful. The bare branches of the cherry trees catch it and hold it for a moment before the angle changes. The city sounds filter over the wall, not specific sounds, but the general murmur of 500,000 people living, which is a sound you can only properly hear when you're above the street level, when the individual voices and carts and animals resolve into something larger, a kind of collective breathing. You sit on the parapet edge and look at the sky. This is not a dramatic thing. You're not planning anything, not making decisions. You're just sitting on a low roof in October with the light going and the city murmuring beyond the wall, doing nothing at all for approximately 20 minutes. Then you go back down. But the light stays with you for the rest of the day, the way certain specific colours of sky do, filed somewhere in the memory as evidence of a real and continuing world outside the daily calculations. Let me tell you about the difficult evenings, because the difficult evenings are what the romantic versions leave out most thoroughly. Not every client is Ihara-san. Most of them are reasonable. Most of them understand the protocols, observe the forms, conduct themselves with the basic decorum that the Yoshiwara system maintains as a condition of entry. You are not a street corner transaction. You are an experience that requires a formal introduction, a letter of sponsorship from a current client, or a recognized Yoshiwara connection, an evaluation by the house, and an extended ritual of tea and conversation before anything else begins. All of this filters out the worst of what the district sees, but filters aren't walls. The difficult evenings come in various forms. There's the client who arrives, having understood the system intellectually but expected something different in practice, who treats the tea ceremony as an inconvenient preamble, who doesn't understand why you can decline someone without Fumiko's direct intervention, who interprets the elaborate protocols as performance rather than substance. There's the client who comes because his wife has died, or his business has failed, or he's received news that has broken something in him, and he sits across from you and pours his grief into the space between you and wants you to be a container for it, specifically and personally, in a way that the formal structure of the visit was never designed to hold. There's the client who drinks too much. On the evening 4 days after the procession, there's a client who arrived at the house through a connection that Fumiko accepted on good faith, and who turns out to be in practice someone who has confused the Yoshiwara world with something simpler than it is. He's not violent. You want to be clear about this. Not violent, not threatening in any direct sense. He's just relentlessly, exhaustingly incorrect. He talks over the tea ceremony. He asks questions he already believes the answers to. He uses words that belong to a different, simpler transaction. You could handle this. You have handled this, various versions of it, more times than you'd like to count. There is a technique, not deception exactly, more like redirection, the conversational equivalent of the Soto Hachimonji, which is to say that you move the interaction somewhere else without making visible the effort of the move. But tonight, after 4 days of procession recovery and shoulder management, and Ihara-san's documentation still not having arrived, and the particular tired quality of mid-autumn, the redirection takes more energy than usual. You deploy it. You sit with him for 2.5 hours and you are flawless. Not warm, not cold, flawless. When he leaves, you go to the kitchen. Okio is there, alone, at the very end of her day. She looks at you the way she looks at you sometimes. Not with the expression of someone who's asking questions, but with the expression of someone who's seen this before many times, who doesn't need you to explain anything. She puts water on. You sit on the step. You're not crying, and you're not going to cry. This is not the kind of difficult that produces tears. It's a different kind, more like the physical fatigue after an exercise that wasn't supposed to be exercise. A using up of something without the corresponding satisfaction of having made something. The water heats. Okio pours. You hold the cup. The heat goes into your palms. The Miura house's new junior girl fell twice in rehearsal today, Okio says, not looking up, not at you, just saying a thing. Which turn? Both. The north and the south gate turn. That's where the paving is uneven. That's what I said. Nobody listened. You drink the tea. The kitchen smells of the evening's cooking, dashi and miso and the sweet charcoal of the brazier. The house is quiet now, the sounds of the working evening winding down. Someone's shamisen in a distant room, playing something slow. Okio-san, you say. How long have you been here? 30 years in the spring. And before that? A pause. Before that I cooked in a merchant household in the Nihonbashi district. Very respectable. Very boring. She looks at her work. The merchant's wife didn't like the way I seasoned the miso. So you came here. Fumiko's predecessor offered good wages and asked fewer questions about my seasoning. A slight smile directed at no one. I've been here ever since. You think about this. 30 years. A different kind of 30 years from the ones Yuki spent here. A different kind from the ones you're accumulating. But 30 years in the same building, the same walls, the same canal smell when the wind shifts. Do you ever want to leave? She looks at you properly now. It's a direct look. Not unkind, but not soft either. I could leave, she says. I owe nothing to the house. I'm not contracted. A pause. I stay because I know this place. I know what it needs. I know what the women here need. Another pause. I know how to make the miso the way Fumiko likes it, which took me 4 years to learn, and I'm not throwing that away. She says this last part with complete seriousness, and it takes you a moment to understand that it's also very slightly funny, and when you do, something loosens in your chest. Not much, just a little. The miso is excellent, you say. I know, says Okio. The cold arrives in the 3rd week of the 10th month. Not gradually, this is Edo, which does weather with a certain directness. One morning the temperature simply drops, and the basin water that was merely cold is now properly icy, and the brazier that was optional is now necessary, and the light that was amber gold turns silver white with a quality that means, this is winter, beginning. You feel it first in the mornings, lying on the block. The room holds cold the way wooden rooms do, not the bone-penetrating cold of a stone building, but a pervasive, settled chill that lives in the tatami and the paper screens and the fabric of everything. You pull the thin blanket tighter. The shimada, today it's 5 days old, Osono comes tomorrow, absorbs the cold and sits heavier on your neck. Hair is like that in winter. The oil stiffens slightly, the structure becomes less flexible, the pins seat differently in the changed ambient temperature. Not enough to matter functionally, but enough to notice. You notice. Hannah has added a second layer to her sleeping futon and now resembles, in the mornings, a very small, determined person emerging from an elaborate cocoon. The house adds charcoal to the braziers in the corridors. Fumiko, you notice, wears an additional layer under her kimono that she didn't wear in October. She doesn't comment on this. The cold is simply addressed. The cherry trees outside are fully bare now. In 3 months, in the earliest days of spring, the buds will begin. The first tiny tight points of colour against the dark wood. This is the most anticipated thing in the Yoshiwara calendar, the blooming. The crowds for cherry blossom season are larger than the crowds for any procession. People come from all over the city, from outside the city, to walk under the sakura trees inside the walls, because outside you can see cherry trees anywhere in Edo. But here, there's something else, not just the trees. The combination of the trees and the lanterns and the women in formal dress walking beneath them and the whole particular quality of a world that exists outside ordinary time. That specific thing, that's here. Only here. You think about this sometimes, about the way Yoshiwara manufactures its own beauty in ways that real beauty doesn't require, with walls and rules and controlled access and calculated timing. And you think about whether beauty that's manufactured this way is still beauty. Whether the cherry blossoms are less beautiful because they're inside a walled quarter than they would be if they were on a hillside somewhere. You've never resolved this. You don't think it resolves. Ihara's papers arrive on a Wednesday, brought by a messenger to the house's front door, and deposited with Fumiko with the formality of a legal delivery. Fumiko sends them to you without comment. You read them in your room in the evening, by the light of 2 candles, with Hana asleep and the house quiet, and the first frost of the year forming on the paper screens. The documentation is thorough. It covers the residence in Kyoto, described in specific terms, a house with a garden in the Okazaki district, which you know only as a name, an area of temples and craftsman streets. The household income specified to the nearest mon, with a provision for review after 3 years. This staffing, 2 servants, maintained at his expense. Medical care, covered. Travel, subject to negotiation but not prohibited. The clauses you were looking for. What happens if he dies? A lump sum named. A sum that would, you calculate quickly, buy you something small but real. A beginning. What happens if his circumstances change? Termination with 3 months' notice and a lesser sum. What happens if you want to leave? Also with 3 months' notice, on your initiative, with nothing. On your initiative, with nothing. You read this clause twice. In both directions, an exit costs him relatively little. In one direction, it costs you everything. You fold the papers carefully, set them on the writing stand where you keep your correspondence. Look at them for a while. The candles burn down. The frost on the screens catches the candlelight and holds it briefly before the flame drops. You pick up a brush. In the small notebook you keep for things you don't want to forget, you write, "What is freedom shaped like if it's not owned?" Then you set the brush down and go to sleep on the block. Here's what you know that you didn't know when you were 9. You know that debt is a shape. It has architecture the way a building does. Foundation, walls, weight-bearing elements, decorative surfaces. You can learn the architecture. You can learn which walls are load-bearing and which ones are ornamental. You can learn where the weak points are. This knowledge doesn't eliminate the debt, but it changes your relationship to it. You know that beauty is a skill, not an attribute, not something you have or don't have, a skill developed through practice, maintained through work, lost through neglect. You have put the same quality of attention into being beautiful that a craftsman puts into making beautiful things. The result is approximately the same, something that looks effortless because all the effort is invisible. You know that most people in this world, male clients, female rivals, male administrators, female house mothers, are operating from a position of partial information and attempting to extract maximum advantage from it. This is not cynicism. It's just accurate. And accuracy is more useful than either cynicism or naivete. You know that 11 years is a long time to live anywhere, and that living anywhere for 11 years means you know it the way you know the specific sound of your own breathing, completely without effort, in a way that nobody who hasn't lived there can fully share. You know that Hana is going to be very good at whatever she decides to be good at, and that the best thing you can do for her is to be, in her presence, as precise and honest and capable as you can manage, so that she has a real version of this world to calibrate against rather than an idealized one. You know that your left shoulder needs a doctor. You know that the 4 years are real, and the documentation is real, and the decision is real, and none of these things are going to resolve themselves by thinking about them at night on a wooden block. What you know is you will make the decision when you have enough information to make it correctly. Not before, not under pressure. When you have enough information, let's go back to the beginning. Not the very beginning. Not the 9-year-old arriving at the gate. Not the first night in a house that smelled of incense and unfamiliarity and something harder to name, but an earlier night than this one. A night about a year after you arrived, when you were 10 and the wooden block was still a recent introduction. You remember lying on it in the dark, the house busy somewhere below, voices and music and the particular quality of noise that makes up Yoshiwara's nighttime atmosphere, and thinking, I will never sleep like this. I will lie here every night and never sleep. This is impossible. You were wrong, not immediately. It took 8 months, as Yuki said. 8 months of waking up 10 times a night, of finding yourself face down with ruined hair, of the specific morning shame of knowing you'd moved, that the paper marker had shifted, that the night had defeated you again. But one morning, you remember it clearly even now, which is strange, because you'd think you'd remember the more dramatic moments. One morning you woke up and the paper was clean, and the neck ache was clean, the familiar good ache, and the hair was intact, and you knew without anyone telling you that something had changed permanently. Your body had learned. It had learned the way bodies learn things that they practice long enough, so completely, so below consciousness, that you couldn't unlearn it if you tried. The sleep on the block became the default sleep. The controlled stillness became the natural stillness. This is what 11 years of anything looks like from inside it. Not a transformation, not a moment of mastery, just a long, slow absorption of a world into your nervous system until the world and the nervous system are no longer distinguishable. You belong here. This is both the achievement and the complexity. Let me tell you what it feels like to carry the shimada in winter, because the seasons change how it sits, and nobody in the woodblock prints is showing you this. Cold stiffens the Bintsuke abura. In summer, the oil is fluid enough that the hair has a very slight movement in the shimada, not a wobble, nothing visible, but something you can feel with your scalp, a very subtle give when you turn your head. In winter, the oil hardens and the structure becomes more rigid, a firmer architecture, less forgiving of motion. This is in some ways better. The winter shimada is more stable. It holds better through a long evening. The pins settle into positions they maintain without adjustment. In other ways, it's harder. The rigid structure transmits motion differently. Instead of absorbing small movements into the oil and hair system, it transfers them directly to the pins and then to the scalp. A sudden turn of the head that in summer would be absorbed becomes in winter a sharper, more precise pressure at each of the 11 pinpoints. The kanzashi pendants don't sway in winter, they hang straight and still. The full formal set in winter is approximately 12% heavier to wear than in summer, not because the mass changes, but because the rigidity changes the felt weight, distributes it less evenly, asks more of the neck. You learn these things by wearing them. There's no other way to learn them. Osono knows this. She adjusts her technique for winter. Slightly less oil, slightly different angles on the pins, a small modification to the front section of the shimada that compensates for the stiffness. The winter shimada and the summer shimada are technically the same style, but in her hands they're different documents describing the same body in different temperatures. You're always slightly cold in winter at the back of your neck. The cold air finds the exposed skin between the hair and the collar, and there's no way to address this without disrupting the nape effect that's deliberately constructed. You wear it cold. This is also normal. There is one gate into the Yoshiwara, the Omon, the Great Gate. You see it every time you walk near the front of the district, a large wooden structure with a guardhouse, manned always, recording the comings and goings of clients, verifying that women leaving the district have the required permissions and escorts. Women do leave. Not freely, not spontaneously, but the gate is not an absolute prohibition. Festival days, medical visits under specific conditions, the supervised temple visits like the one you made in the spring. Rarely, very rarely, a special exemption for some other purpose. The gate is the most seen thing in all of Yoshiwara and the most overlooked. Clients pass through it thinking about what they're entering. Women see it thinking about what it means to be on this side. You have stood near it sometimes, not at it, not directly in front of it, which would invite questions and looks, but near it, on the main street, where you can see the gap of the opening, and beyond it, the other street, the ordinary street, the street that leads away from here. You've never tried to use the gate without permission. This is not entirely obedience, it's partly calculation. The consequences of an unauthorized departure, the debt consequences, the contract consequences, the reputational consequences, would set back the 4-year timeline by an amount you can't afford. But it's also something else, something harder to name, a kind of not contentment, not resignation. More like, this is the current reality. This is the shape of now. You navigate the shape of now with the tools available to you, and you save the other kind of thinking for later, for when the tools have worked. The gate is there. You know the gate is there. That's enough for now. Late November. A night when the cold has properly arrived and the house is quiet and you're awake for no particular reason, the way you are sometimes, not from bad sleep, just from the particular alertness that descends occasionally at 2 a.m, the mind deciding it has something to examine. Hana is asleep across the room. She sleeps with complete unconsciousness, the way she always does. The child's uncomplicated surrender to sleep that you remember from before the block, from before the training, from before the Yoshiwara world had fully replaced whatever world you came from. She makes a small sound in her sleep. Not a word, just a sound. You look at her in the dark. In 10 years, give or take, she'll be where you are, or something like where you are. The district will be slightly different. The clients will be different men. The fashions will have shifted in some way, but the basic architecture will be the same. The wooden block, the shimada, the gate, the calculation. Unless, you think about this word, unless the quarter is closed. There have been rumours occasionally throughout your time here, rumours of shogunate reformers who want to restrict the licensed quarters, of moral campaigns that wax and wane, of the uncertain future of a 300-year-old institution in a country that's always, underneath everything, uncertain. Unless she finds a different path. It happens. Rarely, but it happens. Unless you stop this thought before it gets specific, because the specific version of it is not available to you tonight, and speculating about unavailable things is a waste of sleep you need. You look at Hannah. She doesn't know you're looking at her. She's completely elsewhere, in whatever dream has her. She's very small. This is not new information. She's been very small since she arrived. But it lands differently tonight, in the cold and the dark, with the gate a few 100 meters away, and the documentation on your writing stand, and the shoulder that needs a doctor, and the 4 years stretching out ahead. She's very small. You hope she grows up carefully. You hope she grows up with better tools than you had. You hope the world between now and her adulthood is, well, you hope. The bell rings. You open your eyes. For half a second you don't know where you are. Then your neck moves. Just slightly. Just the tiniest unconscious shift. And the ache hits you. And you know. The block. The hair. The room. December now. The cold is settled and permanent. The brazier's small warmth insufficient against it. The basin water requiring actual ice breaking in the early morning. Hannah is already awake. "Good morning," she says. "Good morning." She checks the pins before you ask her to. "All present," she says. "The second from the right was very slightly loose. I didn't correct it." "You can correct it." A pause. Then, the smallest TK of a pin being reseated. "Better?" you ask. "Better." You sit up. Let the ache in your neck settle. Press your thumb against the warmth the block has left at the base of your skull. Osuno comes today. After Osuno, 3 to 7 days of preservation. After preservation, the next formal evening, the next client, the next calculation. The decision about the documentation, which you're still making. The doctor's appointment you scheduled yesterday for the shoulder, which Fumiko approved without comment. The gate at the front of the district, opening at dawn and closing at dusk according to the same schedule it's kept for 100 years. The cherry trees in the courtyard bare in December, the buds still months away. The block waiting on the stand by your mat for tonight. This is the shape of now. You navigate it. Let it come. The last candle is out. The brazier has gone from active warmth to the slow dying glow of charcoal that's given what it has, and is now just warmth at the edges. Hana, asleep, her breathing slow and even. Yoshiwara, settling. The last shamisen has quieted. The last lantern outside has been lowered. The city, always present, never fully absent, the million-person murmur that is the sound of Edo at rest. Your neck on the block. The paper clean. The shimada intact. You breathe. Let go of the documentation. Let go of the shoulder, which the doctor will see on Thursday, which will either be manageable or won't be, and either way can wait until Thursday. Let go of the 4 years, which will either be 4 years or something else, and either way are not tonight. Let go of the gate. Let go of Hana's small sleeping form and all the things you hope for her that you can't guarantee. Let go. Let go. This is what the block is for. Not just the hair. The block is the physical requirement that makes stillness unavoidable. You can't toss and turn on a wooden block. You can't roll away from the thoughts. You can only lie still, and when the body lies still long enough, the mind follows. This is what you've learned in 11 years that the people who describe Yoshiwara from outside don't understand. The wooden block is not only torture, it is also, in its way, permission. Permission to be absolutely still. Permission to stop performing, stop calculating, stop managing. Permission to be, for a few hours, just a body at rest. Your eyes are closed. The city breathes. The block holds your neck. Your hair, intact, correct. The kanzashi in their positions, hangs free. Your feet are still. Your left shoulder, for the first time today, is silent. The sounds of Yoshiwara resolve into something below language. Not words, not calculation. Just warmth, cold, dark, breath. The boundary between awake and asleep begins to soften at the edges, and then centuries will pass. The Yoshiwara you know will change beyond recognition. The Meiji Restoration will come, and with it a different understanding of the world, and the walled quarter will be officially dismantled in the 1870s, and then rebuilt in different forms, and the whole architecture of it, legal, social, physical, will slowly become something else, something the 18th century you live in wouldn't recognize. The cherry trees will be planted and cut and replanted. The walls will come down. The wooden block will survive in a handful of museum collections. Curators will write careful explanatory cards. Scholars will study the specific design, the dimensions, the paper cushioning, the tiny drawers with their small compartments for small necessities. They will be correct about the facts. They won't be able to tell you what it feels like at 4 a.m. The Shimada hairstyle will survive in theatre, in ceremony, in the specific cultural preservation that Japan applies to things it considers worth keeping. The women who maintain it will work for years to acquire the skill. They will sleep during training periods, on blocks. They will wake up with the same ache you wake up with. Some things travel across centuries without diminishing. The Oiran dochu will be performed still, in annual festivals, in tourist events, in cultural demonstrations. Women will wear the formal dress and walk the Soto Hachimonji through streets that are no longer walled, to crowds that no longer required to be silent, in cities of 10 million people, where the original Yoshiwara occupies a specific neighborhood that is now ordinary real estate. They will walk the walk as correctly as they can. They will feel the burn in their feet at the 45-minute mark. They will look forward, above the crowd, at a point in the middle distance. Some things don't change. The body doesn't change in the ways that matter. The weight of formal dress, the architecture of a structured hairstyle, the specific complaint of a neck that has spent too many hours at a precise angle. The human heart doesn't change. The need for rest at the end of a long day, that doesn't change either. So let it come. Let sleep take you the way sleep has been taking women in this room for 100 years before you, and will take them for 100 years after. Let the block hold what it holds. Let the weight of the Shimada be what it is. The accumulated mass of oil and hair and 11 pins, all the hours that went into its construction, all the weeks of preservation, all the precise care you've given to a structure that exists to be seen by others. Let it rest. It's earned the rest too. Let the city fade to its lowest register. Let the cold settle around you and stop being the cold and become just the temperature, just the thing that is. Let your hands stop holding anything. Let your face stop arranging itself. Let the left shoulder do whatever it does when it's not being monitored. You are warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You have a roof and work that matters and people counting on you and a decision that will make itself when it's ready. You have Hana, asleep 3 feet away, breathing slowly. You have 47 kanzashi on the padded stand, each one a memory, each one a proof of something real. You have 4 years, or possibly less, or possibly something else entirely, something that hasn't been named yet because it hasn't arrived yet. You have tonight. Tonight is enough. Tonight is actually, honestly, without any performance or calculation, enough. The block under your neck, the hair above it, the dark all around, and you, Kozakura, who was a 9-year-old girl from somewhere in the countryside that she doesn't talk about much, who became this, who is still becoming this, who doesn't yet know what she'll become after this, lying perfectly still on a piece of lacquered wood, which is both the most uncomfortable and the most honest thing in this beautiful, impossible world. You've earned this rest. Take it. Dream of whatever comes. The cherry trees will bloom in spring. They always do. Good night.